Welcome back to Public Sector Voices with Emily Rodgers. On the show today, we'll be talking to Cllr Sarah Rouse, independent leader of Malvern Hills District Council. Cllr Rouse has recently been recognised as part of the Everyday Heroes campaign, backed by 33 councils in the West Midlands, and I'm dying to find out why.
Hi Sarah, welcome to the show. Thank you for talking to me today. So, can you talk us through what exactly is the situation at Malvern Hills District Council and why are you an independent leader?
Well, in May 2019, which seems an awfully long time ago now, the election came back with a real mix of political parties and independents. So there was 10 independents elected, 5 Greens, 9 Liberal Democrats, 1 Labour and 13 Conservatives. So out of all of that, after discussions, the Greens and the Independents, who've always worked together, we actually ended up with 15. So we had the most people. So I'm an independent councillor working in the Democratic group, which is the Independents and the Greens. We're working with the Liberal Democrat group. So I've become leader of the council out of all of that political sort of mix-up. So that's why I'm an independent leader.
That's really interesting. Do you know of any other councils who are in the same situation?
I think quite a lot over that 2019 election. There was an awful lot came into no overall control. Mm-hmm. They're usually political parties together, so the Greens and the Liberal Democrats or the Conservatives working with someone or that kind of thing. There's not very many that ended up with an independent Green and Liberal Democrat together situation. I know Hereford, which is my next council, they're an independent and Green. So there are a few, but there's not many of us that are like that.
Wow. And you've been leader of the council for just over a year then, if you were elected in May. What kind of challenges have you seen during that time?
Well, for my first year as being leader, I mean, obviously I didn't think I was going to be leader, and then I was elected. And then the hardest challenge at the start was getting everyone to work together. Mm-hmm. Because it was quite a shot, I think, to the Conservative group who now weren't in power anymore. And my biggest challenge at the start really was trying to settle everyone down and get us all together to sort of go in the same direction, because I was really focused on not making anything party political, and that's what I'd stood on and that's what I've always gone with. So I don't mind what party anyone was part of. We should all be working for the residents. So that was my first challenge. Then I think we had a general election. So we had to struggle the way through the general election, which meant all our officers' time was taken up with that, and quite a lot of people were standing with different political parties, and that upset the balance that I'd established.
Yeah.
And then we did Brexit. So that again, that was quite stressful to try and deal with, to get through. Again, flagging up all the party politics, which I was trying to avoid. Mm. And just when I thought it was settling down after that, in January this year, our chief executive decided to retire. Which is one of the most major things, you can happen to an organisation. They're your leader. They're the sort of guide as you sail through everything. And that unsettled not only the staff, but the councillors. And just when we were beginning to resolve that and having interviews, Malvern Hills was hit by the worst floods I think we've had for decades. And devastated Tenbury Wells up in the north, Upton, the roads were closed. So I was out, trying to help in all of that. And just as we got over the flooding, I thought, right, we're going to get back to normal. We'll get on with our work. We went into a pandemic. So my first year has gone literally from crisis to crisis.
Yeah, that is a lot to digest. It kind of goes from one thing to the next. I can't believe how many you've had to face in the space of a year. So let's just go back a little. The new chief executive, how has that been? How's the change from having a new chief executive been?
Well, very luckily, we ended up hiring someone who actually still works within the organisation. So we went through the process. And our original chief exec, he's still with us till the end of July. He wanted to give us a good lead in time to introduce the new chief exec to everyone. But of course, all that had to go because we've not been able to hold any meetings. So I think we actually hired him about a week before the big floods or the pandemic. It's all become a bit of a blur.
All turned into one big ball of chaos.
Yeah. I've been in emergency planning mode since February, I think. So it's working okay, but of course it's terribly difficult for him because suddenly we're losing our guide and the person that we look to for our advice, right in the middle of all of this. And Vic, our new guy's got to step into this and take over the reins in the middle of a pandemic. So I'm quite confident it's going to be okay, but it's been very unsettling.
Well, all I can say is that I hope you've had all your crises, plural, in 1 year, which means that going forward you're not going to have any.
Yeah, well, that's my plan. I think that'd be great. I'm done with all of that now. I don't need any more emergency planning.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I want to talk to you about the floods later on, but just can you run us through quickly kind of the council's reaction and response to the pandemic and how that's been? Anything that stands out for you?
I think what's been amazing has been the community spirit around here, and how Malvern Hills and the officers and the councillors. I sent out an email as soon as it happened and it kicked off and said, right, everyone, we've got to be community leaders. We need to get out there and do what we were elected to do. And I think very much that's what happened. The councillors went out into the community. I personally set up a volunteer group across the 1,500 houses in my ward, and we worked with the officers to just make sure that people had food, people felt safe, that we got information out, and then everyone had somewhere to go, somebody to contact, because that was my real worry, that people would be alone and isolated and they didn't know who to ring. So I think that was our first real challenge. And then obviously after that, just dealing with every single thing that's come every day, every different, having to roll out the business rates to people, having to suddenly find all the businesses of which we didn't have details to make sure they got their money and support people. And it's just gone on like that. Every week there's a new challenge.
Well, yeah, because this is kind of, well, it's the word of the year, but it is unprecedented. Nobody's been in these situations before, so there's no kind of protocol of how to deal with it. And especially with a leader who's not been leading for that long, it must have been extremely daunting.
Yeah, I do look back and think the Local Government Association run a course on emergency planning, and I do look back and think I really wish I'd gone on that course because it probably would have been really helpful right now.
Definitely, but I mean, you've lived it in real life. Yeah, so that's probably better.
I've now been interviewed quite a few times by the Local Government Association to go into their training pack on how to lead in a pandemic. So I think I've learned a lot and come out the other side of it.
Very good.
But it was very, very much just about instinct and you know, having no idea what to do, but that fear that you're going to let people down. Yeah. And that was my key all the way through. You just got to keep going and do what you can.
Yeah, and I know
it has been exhausting.
I know that your efforts haven't gone unnoticed. Talk us through the Everyday Heroes campaign and what it was that you've done to be recognised for it.
Well, that was lovely. It's about recognising people in the public sector who've gone above and beyond, I suppose, and to showcase all the different things that local government do. So they were interviewing social workers and bin men and everyone who's put that special effort in. And I think I got flagged up because I'm new and because I'd gone through the flooding, and as soon as we'd gone through that, we went into the pandemic. And just stories sort of being on the ground. You know, when the flooding happened, I actually ended up rescuing somebody's chickens from their garden, and they ended up in my garden for about 3 months because their house was flooded. You know, we carried them out of a house and put them in the car in the middle of the floods. So I was very much hands-on and involved, really with it. And then I think the same with the pandemic. I set up my volunteer group and we got postcards out to 1,500 people. So it was about being really involved, but equally running the council and the volunteer group and feeding back into national government. So I think that was why.
So it's more about recognising kind of your attributes as a leader.
Yes, I think so. I hope so. Yeah, and just the ability to step up and just get on and do what you know you've got to do and not panic.
Definitely. Do you know who it was that nominated you?
I'm not really sure. No, it just came out of the blue, so it was quite sweet. I haven't had time to ask, to be quite honest.
Oh, that's
because every day I'm just carry on going, getting my emails sorted and talking to people. So, but it made it feel nice. It made it feel all that effort worthwhile.
Well, definitely. It's always nice to be recognised for your work.
Yeah.
And I know we talked earlier about the flooding, and it will have affected so many businesses and so many communities in Malvern. Obviously, the flooding that happened was devastating, and it affected a lot of the country, I know. But what specifically were the effects that happened in your area, especially on local businesses?
Tenbury Wells, it's a little market town, and it was just wiped out. I went up quite a few times. I went up right at the start because I wanted to see the volunteers and be, in the rescue centre. Mm-hmm. And every single business was just flooded. There was, I don't think any survived.
Wow.
And they just, what was amazing was just days after the water had receded, they were all in, they were all cleaning up, they were just doing their best. But some of them are not going to survive because of what happened, because they couldn't afford the insurance, their stock wasn't insured. And it was just devastating to see people like that. And then just as we put a fund together of £100,000 we were trying to think of festivals we could hold, ways we could bring people back in, the pandemic happened and it shut everything down. And some people, who'd lost their houses, and I think of the lady whose chickens I had, they didn't have any time because the floodwaters just rose so quickly, they couldn't take anything out the house. And they arrived at the rescue centre that we'd set up, just wearing the clothes they were in, with their dog, 3 cats in a basket. That was all they had left. And they'd left their chickens, and we went back and got them. And I think that really impacts on you, and it stays with you. And I shall always remember their little faces as they wandered in.
Yeah,
so it's just that devastating. It's that real effect. It's real people's lives.
It's very different to kind of watch it happen on the news and then be in the actual situation as it happens.
Yeah, to actually talk to people who've lost, the business that they've been building up all their life. And there was a charity shop, and the waters had just pushed the doors open with the force and just washed everything away. And they just lost everything they had, and they didn't have insurance because they couldn't afford it, because it's an area that's flooded before. It costs thousands and thousands. And it's the real people, the real stories. It's not the same when you see it on the telly.
Are there any situations where the businesses recovered from the flood and kind of thought they were going to get back on their feet, but now the coronavirus has kind of thwarted that again?
I think what was amazing was only days after the floodwater had gone down, people were opening up in Tenbury Wells. They just kind of pulled themselves together and said, oh, well, we've been here before. But I don't know now whether they're going to recover. We've been ringing around businesses, talking to them, and what very much the drive now as we move out of the response phase, hopefully into recovery, is what we can do. How can we help people? Because we've still got that money, the flood money, but obviously we can't have festivals. We can't drag people in and have, events because of where we are. So now's the point. We've got to really talk to each individual people, person and business, and see what we can do. And I had a meeting. Another place that flooded badly was Upton. And I was there on Monday just walking about with some other councillors thinking, what could we do in the high street? How can we help? And talking to people about what they want and how we can help them. So it's just about gathering information, doing what we can.
And was there any ideas that you thought maybe might work?
Well, in Upton, certainly just little ideas about perhaps closing off a little area of the road so that the businesses can get out and use the pavement area. A quirky idea, there's quite a lot of little bollards, decorative bollards around, and we were thinking, well, if you're standing around outside drinking a cup of tea, if you had a little tray, people could put them on where there wasn't room to have chairs, put them on a little tray around the bollard, and bringing in the festivals when we can, because Upton is very much a festival a town. It has jazz and blues and sunshine festivals and all sorts. And, of course, they've all gone. And that's what brings people into Upton.
Yeah.
So it was lots of small, innovative ideas that we could do now straight away and then look to the bigger picture as we move on.
Well, that's it. It's kind of all about thinking outside the box at this time, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And talking to as many people as possible, because everyone's got a different idea.
Yeah.
Just bringing it all together.
And what about from central government then? What kind of measures are being put in place to protect these people from the floods in the future on a wider scale? Are you getting any kind of support from that aspect?
Well, we've got 3 different flood plans now for the places that got hit the worst. But just today it's been released that they're going to look at raising one of the roads. And a lot of the problem we've got is we need to raise the road up so people can keep getting through.
Right.
The support from central government, it's supposed to be there. They've offered them, there's a big pot of money, but obviously we've all got to fight over that pot of money. And our MP did take it to the House of Parliament. It was discussed in Parliament a few weeks ago, but we need something like £4.5 million for the Tenbury Wells flood defence. So we've just got to keep on lobbying and asking. But because it's a small market town, the population is small. It's devastating for the people who are there, but it doesn't tick the box because it's not wiping out hundreds and hundreds of businesses.
Yeah.
So we're fighting away with them to back us up there. We've just put in some planning permission for another one in Sevenoaks, and we've got the funding for that one.
Okay.
Because bless them, they've been flooded a lot. So yes, in a way, we are getting some support, but we're having to fight for it all the way.
And how would you kind of rate the communication or the relationship between central government and a small local authority like yourselves?
Well, I think it's just usually we find out the next morning what it is they've announced, and then we've got to do it. That's how it's felt,
right? Very
much. And I suppose they're making regulations for Birmingham and London, and we're a little rural, I don't want to say backwater, but we're just small market towns.
Yeah.
So we're then trying to adapt to what we can do. So when they announced business rates, great, you're going to pay everyone all this money, we then suddenly had to create a system to do it. But we didn't even know it was happening. So I think there could have been better communication to us before they announced everything, rather than us finding out on the telly as well. So through my local government, I'm a regional chair on the local government association, and that's worked quite well because we've had a lot of meetings feeding back up the line. So we're able to tell our reps there, and they feed it right into Robert Jenrick and the ministers. So that's worked quite well. Yeah, the other way down, it's been, well, we'll find out what's happening on the briefing at 5 o'clock, and then we'll work out what's going on.
Yeah, it's kind of more in response to what's been said rather than being part of the conversation.
Absolutely, yeah. But the local government association have been really good about gathering our thoughts and then feeding it back in, and then feeding back down, what other issues have you got? How much money do you need? What are the financial problems? How are you dealing with homelessness?
Yeah.
So we are able to feed in that way. And that I think for little old Malvern, that's been really key. Because if I hadn't had that role, I would have had no way to feed in.
Yeah, it's kind of a good foot in the door.
Yeah. One of the other good things we've had is we're a district council. So we're part of 6 other district councils under a county council. So every Friday, we've all got together on the phone and had a good chat about what's happening in each of our districts, and then linked that to the county. And I think that's, from what I can hear, quite unusual, that we're all working together and talking to each other. And that means that we can then lobby harder and better for our area.
Well, that's bound to help because you've got, strength in numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're all different political parties as well, and that's all just been set aside. Absolutely, just working for the residents.
That's brilliant. And there is kind of a big push, well, there has been over the past couple of years, for doing more for the smaller towns in terms of levelling them up and kind of giving them the attention that maybe they haven't received because of the bigger cities that are taking all of the attention. Have you guys felt any of that where you are, the things like the towns funds and things like that?
We haven't in Malvern. I think in Worcestershire as a whole, we are starting to get that. But it does often feel that Worcestershire gets overlooked because we're not Birmingham and we're not the south and we're in the middle. And we just kind of seem to miss out on a lot of things. But we're working together better now. And I think working with the districts and the county, we can be a stronger voice. And I think if we've learned anything out of this, that we all need to work together more and fight for more. So I wouldn't say, I don't feel we are now, but I think in the future what the pandemic's done is brought us all together to shout a little louder for our area.
Definitely. And obviously this week has seen some of the high street stores reopening. Has that happened where you are? Yes,
I've just driven and had a look this morning, see how everyone's coping. What a lot of our problems are, we've got very narrow pavements, we're market towns, so it's where people can queue and how we can make town centres more welcoming, what we can do that's innovative.
Right.
So they do seem to be opening up. We've had a lot of conversations with the town councils and with traders about how we can help, what we can do. But I think when the hospitality trade opens as well, that's going to be the next step, because we've got a lot of pubs in our towns, and how are they going to cope, and how is everyone going to queue? And we've got all these little independent shops. Well, if everyone's queuing, they're all on the pavement, and it's that sort of small problem that we're focusing on trying to help people with.
Yeah, well, this was going to be my question, because obviously with the 2 crises that you have faced this year alone, only 6 months into the year, when do you think your area will start to recover? Or do you think it would be fair to say that you'd be allowed to take a little bit longer than others? Do you think that's likely to happen?
I think it's going to be a really long road to recovery. Mm-hmm. The unemployment figures that are coming out, Malvern's tripled since April.
Really?
I think we had about 800 people who were unemployed then. We're now over 2,000 towards 3,000, which is a small number.
Yeah.
But in that shorter space of time, that's a lot of people. And my worry is that we're going to get worse before we get better with the furloughing when that ends. Mm. So I think recovery is going to take a lot longer than we think. And I don't think the flooding helped because, they've had 2 double whammies within 6 months, like you say. Mm-hmm. They've had to pay out to rebuild their shops, and now they've had to shut their shops for 6 months. But we're determined that we're going to do everything we can. And we've got these pots of money that we've set aside to help people. We've got a panel that's going to look at town centre regeneration and just focus on that and draw everyone together. So I think it's going to be a long haul. The next crisis after the pandemic and the flooding and all the other crises is going to be, an economic recession and recovery. So I think for a good 12 months, this is going to be the main work of our council. But not only economic recovery, it's communities as well, isolation, mental health, all those impacts that it's had, and even on education and on the children's futures. And one of the highest levels of unemployment is the young people. I think it's gone up 8%. So we've got to focus on those things, and that really is going to take over all the work that we're going to be doing for the next 12 months.
Yeah, it does seem like it's going to be a long road, but I think it would be unfair to kind of bring the podcast to a close on that note, because the reason I got in touch with you in the first place was to celebrate you, really, for the campaign that you were nominated for, and it just feels wrong to me to end it on such a
negative note.
Yeah, exactly. Because I did want to speak to you. The reason I wanted to speak to you in the first place was because of all the great work and the strong leadership that you've shown, and hopefully be able to spread that through with our audience to other councils and kind of celebrate what you've done. So thank you so much for speaking to us, and hopefully the road will not be that long.
We're going to be fine. We will absolutely just keep going. That's how I feel. Yes, we're in a hole. It's going to be difficult, but we're going to pull together, and we're just going to keep going. That's the way to lead us out of this.
I think that's nice, simple advice.
Yeah, keep going.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, congratulations in order for Councillor Rouse. It's nice to hear some good news for a change. On next week's show, we'll be speaking to Councillor Dave Stewart, who is the leader of the Isle of Wight Council, about their role in the Test and Trace government scheme.